I was one of those kids that was born in December, and unfortunately, I found myself sitting in the first grade at about age 5. Um, Quite a culture shock. The year before that, I was probably about 4 years old, and like most 4 year olds, I was in my mother's tote as she went from store to store, namely the supermarket. And I can remember asking her the question as we would stop at the cashier on our way to the car, "Why do we have to make this stop? I don't get it. You're giving the cashier money, the cashier's giving you money back. Why do we gotta?" It just made no sense to me whatsoever. And I can remember my mom explaining to me saying, "Well, money has value." And I said, "I don't get it. I don't understand. What's value?" and, and that's why it then ended with, "Well, that's why you're going to school." Well, unfortunately, um, grammar school, high school, college years, advanced degrees, and everything, they didn't teach, and they don't teach the American public, at least not in the government schools, the value of money. And if you think they do, I want you to pick out the smartest guy you know, the guy with the college degrees, the MBAs, the law degrees, and ask him, what is the value of a dollar? And what was the value 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago? And just listen for the chirping, the crickets. I'm not pointing this out, folks, to come across as the smartest guy in the room. I'm not. In fact, I'm probably the dumbest guy in the room. But you can't have a intellectual market discussion with anyone, or you can't even begin to trade stocks or trade anything, buy or sell anything, if you don't understand that money and the dollar has a value and it can be tracked. Now, people will think in terms of an exchange rate when they go to Canada for the summer, the dollar versus the Canadian loonie, or the dollar versus the euro when they're going to go on that cruise, or to Mexico. They get it then. But the same is true day in and day out. The value of the dollar is contingent upon whatever it is it's buying. Um, and that's where Peter Schiff will always, be pulling his hair out with the Contrarian News Bubble channel when he hears them, casting gold aside as some barbaric metal that has no value or nothing that can be explained, and it's so volatile. It goes up, it goes down. It's just awful. And Peter will be, pulling his hair out, saying it's not the gold that's fluctuating. It's the American dollar that is fluctuating when you're measuring it. And it's at that point that most people's brains just get fried. you know, um, One quick, easy way to look at the value of a dollar is to come to a futures contract. This prices the American dollar as it stands, not in contrast to anything else. So you immediately come to this appears to be, and this is an American dollar on a futures contract going back some 20 years on a monthly basis. This appears to be the double top, right? So when was that? Well, that was actually at what price? Let's say at what price. At what price it was conservatively $1.31. $1.31 in a futures contract. When was the first peak? June of 2001. When was the second peak? January of '02. What happened in between here? 9/11. What happened afterwards? Greenspan, Bush, the Iraq, all the wars, and a huge devaluation of the American dollar. We also know, of course, this is where the housing bubble came from, but you can see this huge devaluation. Where is the American dollar today? 80. By the way, this is when the baby boomers would have begun to really, this was the peak of their earning years, and now they were moving into retirement. Great time to burn them. They had saved all that dollars, they had all that purchasing power. Let's go get it. Let's go take it away from them. Highway robbery, folks. But in any case, where is the dollar value today? 80. Peak to 80 is a loss of 33%. So if you're still in the workforce and you are making $100,000 here, it's like making 67,000 here. Loss of purchasing power. Now let's bring up the S&P, because you can measure the S&P in terms of the dollar. And what I want to know is, I want to know when this peak here at this first $1.31, where was the S&P? What was it trading at? And then let's compare where the value of the dollar is and where we know the S&P to be. So let me set that up. Okay, this may look a little busy because I still have some technical lines on here from looking at the S&P, but let me explain to you what we have here. The green line is still the dollar on the futures contract. So here's the $1.31. Here's the double top. This is Bush and Greenspan devaluing everyone's hard-earned saved dollars. Thank you very much, Dr. Greenspan, and then Dr. Bernanke. In any case, and here's the dollar down here around 80. The yellow line is the S&P. The S&P, here's the triple top in the S&P. So what I want to know is when we peaked here, where was the S&P? Appears to be right about here. So let's just go and see. There it is, right in here. This is the peak of the dollar. So what was the S&P here? What was it trading at? 1293, give or take. Close enough for government work. I don't work for the government, trust me. But that'd be close enough for them. 1293. That's interesting. So if the dollar from here to here lost 33% of its value, I would like to know in relative terms what has the S&P really achieved since here. So if the S&P is trading, when the S&P was trading at 1293 and the dollar was valued, my purchasing power was valued at $1.31, and I've lost 33%. If I was to have added 33% to a 1293 times 0.133, this is one way of figuring it out. You can do this a couple of different other ways, but this is the way I'm looking at it. The S&P, the comparable value would be 1720, and look where the S&P is, 1776. So for the last 20 years, we've basically gone nowheres, except if you bought the S&P up here, if you bought it up here when the banks were telling you, and Kudlow and all those guys are telling you there's no tech bubble, and Bullard on the Federal Reserve at the time said it was a minor correction, and you got hammered and you puked it out here, or you puked out your shares down here, you really got hit because you bought them with money that was worth much more over here than down here. And if you puked out your shares down here and you are now trying to buy the shares up here, you're really getting poor really fast because you've lost in your purchasing power. So long story short, folks, dollars have value. Dollars have value. Dollars are a commodity, just as the stock market is a commodity, just as gold is. The stock market has nothing to do with the unemployment, has nothing to do with the weather, has nothing to do with any of it, by and large. It's just another commodity, and you need to find somehow, some way to be able to trade your dollars in different asset classes to protect and to grow your purchasing power. That's what we do day in and day out, month in, month out. And they don't teach you that in the government schools. Not a chance. Good luck. Be careful. Sunday night we're going to do another market video. Invite you to to tune in. We're going to do it this time. We're actually going to give you a little added view of what we provide our subscribers. We're about providing education, folks. This is basically a private club of sorts, and we're not interested in getting 30,000, or we're just interested in surrounding ourselves with like-minded folks that want to learn, want to protect their hard-earned assets, want to grow them, and survive this carnival game. Good luck. Be careful. Bag of Dawn, Stock Market Caddy.